Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 5, Text 21, Instructions of Narada Muni. One back again to this material world. Translation. Shukadeva Goswami continued. My dear king, after hearing the instructions of Narada, the Haryashvas, the sons of Prajapati Daksha, were firmly convinced. They all believed in his instructions and reached the same conclusion. Having accepted him as their spiritual master, they circumambulated that great sage and followed the path by which one never returns to this world. Purport. From this verse we can understand the meaning of initiation and the duties of a disciple and a spiritual master. The spiritual master never instructs his disciple, take a mantra from me, pay me some money, and by practicing this yoga system you will become very expert in materialistic life. This is not the duty of a spiritual master. Rather, the spiritual master teaches the disciple how to give up materialistic life, and the disciple's duty is to assimilate his instructions and ultimately follow the path back home, back to Godhead, from whence no one returns to this material world. After hearing the instructions of Narada Muni, the Haryashvas, the sons of Prajapati Daksha, decided not to be entangled in materialistic life by begetting hundreds of children and having to take care of them. This would have been unnecessarily entangling. The Haryashvas did not consider pious and impious activities. Their materialistic father had instructed them to increase the population. Because of the words of Narada Muni, they could not heed that instruction. Narada Muni, as their spiritual master, gave them the Shastric instructions that they should give up this material world, and as bona fide disciples, they followed his instructions. One should not endeavor to wander to different planetary systems within this universe, for even if one goes to the topmost planetary system, Brahmaloka, one must return again. Shine punye marchalokam vishanti. The endeavors of karmis are a useless waste of time. One should endeavor to return home back to Godhead. This is the perfection of life. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, Abrahma bhuvana loka punarvitano arjuna mamupechitukanteya punarjanmana vijite. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery, wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. Shut these curtains so the sun doesn't come in. Iti vyavasita rajan haryashva ekachetasa prayayustam parikramya pantanam anivartanam. Shukadeva Goswami continued, my dear king, after hearing the instructions of Narada, the Haryashvas, the sons of Prajapati Daksha, were firmly convinced. They all believed in his instructions and reached the same conclusion. Having accepted him as their spiritual master, they circumambulated the great sage and followed the path by which one never returns to this world. So, as was explained in the previous verses, the Haryashvas, the sons of Prajapati Daksha, understood the problems of the material existence. They understood there is no value to being a pawn in the hands of Maya. They understood there is no need to maintain their material positions. Neither was there any need to generate progeny. For the real need in the human form of life is that everybody needs to surrender to Vishnu. Everybody really needs to surrender to Krishna and go back home, back to Godhead. This is the actual need of life. All other so-called needs are merely mental speculation. They are things which may sound good in theory, or which may seem quite nice when you consider them in a very short-term type of a way. But over longer periods of time we find that material existence is not at all good for the conditioned souls. Therefore the Haryashvas, understanding well that material existence is the major problem of life, and conquering over this material existence is the number one activity in the material world, they gave up this material existence and followed the path set by Narada Muni and decided to go back home, back to Godhead, and be very happy. So the instructions of Narada Muni were so powerful that when these instructions were imparted, the Haryashvas simply said, "We do not follow any longer Daksha, our father. Although he is a material father, he is not our real father, and therefore we do not accept him as our authority in spiritual affairs." Of course, in material life, the father is an authority, there's no doubt. But in spiritual life, the father is not actually the father. Therefore, although we accept the father as authority, we do not accept the material father as authority in spiritual affairs. In spiritual affairs, the real father is the spiritual master, who brings one to the point of understanding the Vedic literatures, and therefore one can understand full well the meaning of this human form of life. The materialistic father will train one to live according to very basic principles of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Indeed, Daksha will become so upset that the Haryashvas, his one set of sons, is not interested in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, that he will curse Narada Muni because of that. He is so much absorbed in materialistic affairs that he can't even imagine what life would be like without eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Therefore, he even dares to curse an innocent personality like Narada Muni. And Narada Muni, all he is doing is preaching Krishna consciousness to these sons of Daksha. Oh, what a great offense. Oh, how terrible. Because why? Well, because then they wouldn't go out and have sex life. And for this, Daksha got very angry. We see nowadays there are certain movements who are cults unto themselves, like the anti-cult cult, who are busy being against cults. They should be against themselves as well, but they're not intelligent enough to understand that. So, they are nothing new. It is not the recent concoction of some demented men. No, this concoction has been there for a long time. There have been personalities who have been materialistically demented since time immemorial. It is not that this is anything original. Even Daksha, who's a Prajapati, a son of Brahma, was, of course, Narada Muni was his brother, so he may not have thought of it in that way. But in fact, Narada Muni is the devotional incarnation. He's the incarnation of devotional service. He is very pure acharya of the highest category. Therefore, Daksha, being blind in materialistic existence, couldn't understand that. So, therefore, he treated Narada Muni badly. This is the problem, that persons in the material world, they become blind. There's one blind man who's proclaiming that the purpose of life is to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. And there are other blind men who say, yes, it is so. It is just like that. Therefore, all of these blind men do not go to the proper goal of life, but rather they are simply wandering in the material world, life after life, birth after birth, simply wandering from species to species, and they're not gaining the perfection of life. Therefore, this Krishna consciousness movement is trying to offer a real alternative. Actually, this philosophy of freedom from materialistic existence is the only alternative to the philosophy of materialistic existence. There's no other alternative. Either one is detached from the material world, or one is attached to the material world. But the fact is that unless one starts to surrender to Krishna, there's no question of becoming detached from this material world. One has to become detached from Maya as he is becoming more and more attached to Krishna. Then he will actually become perfected. Becoming attached to Krishna is the main business of the living entities. Actually, this is the whole goal of life. It cannot be repeated enough, because as soon as we start acting in the material world, we become convinced. The goal of life is to become famous. The goal of life is to become rich. The goal of life is to avoid working as much as possible. The goal of life is to enjoy family life as much as possible. The goal of life is to, etc., etc., etc. As soon as one starts working in the material world, then immediately the material existence grabs one, and one starts to think that, yes, this is the goal of life. I should go on and perfect my particular material attachment. Then I'll be happy. So this is not where happiness comes from. This is not where peace comes from. Happiness and peacefulness do not come from these things. They come from gaining Krishna consciousness. Whoever is becoming Krishna conscious, whoever is actually developing his love for Godhead, that personality is actually an intelligent person. Whoever is surrendering to Krishna, he is intelligent. Amongst the general class of man, even if one is not a great technologist, or one is not a great scientist, or one is not a great artist, or one is not a great lecturer, he who actually surrenders to Krishna is the most intelligent amongst men. He who actually knows the art of giving his heart and soul unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that person is the intelligent person. That person is also going to become the most famous person. Anybody who surrenders to Krishna will become known by that surrender. And his intelligence is understood as well, for Rupa Goswami has said, real intelligence is measured by the degree to which you can surrender to Krishna. So if one has very great materialistic qualifications and is able to dazzle everybody by his marvelous words, but he does not surrender to Krishna, then that is simply a waste of time. Because that is not actual intelligence. That may be some technological knowledge or whatever, or something that one has learned. But real intelligence means to know I'm not this body. Real intelligence means to understand things as they are, to be able to discriminate between what is right and what is wrong, what is better and what is worse. This is the whole function of intelligence, to discriminate. So if one cannot discriminate, if one does not know the art of discrimination between that which is real and that which is false, then one has simply wasted his time, and one is not factually acting on the platform of intelligence. Therefore, in our Krishna consciousness movement, we are trying to train people to become intelligent. We are trying to train them to actually learn the art of surrender. Although one may be also engaged in very highly complex fashion, that is all right. There's nothing wrong with that. But if that is the only thing, and there's no surrender to Krishna, then it's a waste of time. Of course, if one says he's surrendering to Krishna and he doesn't do any engagement in devotional service, then that is also bogus. One must learn the art of balancing the two aspects. Otherwise, one will proclaim himself a great soul who does nothing, or one will be one who does everything and doesn't surrender at all to Krishna. So we have to surrender fully to Krishna and do everything for Krishna. That's a great compromise. It's not that we do something for Krishna and we also surrender something to Krishna. We want to do everything for Krishna, and that is perfection. To act for the satisfaction of Krishna in all one's works, all one's offerings of food, all one's austerities, all one's development of knowledge, all one's even development of good qualities. It should all be done with the whole goal and purpose to satisfy Krishna. For that which is done to satisfy Krishna will be successful. That which is not capable of satisfying Krishna will ultimately fail. Success can only come when one learns the art of satisfying Krishna. Otherwise, if one does not learn that art, there's no question of satisfying Krishna. Therefore, in this material world, the whole goal of life should be one only: just how to satisfy Krishna. In our thoughts, in our words, in our deeds, in our actions, in our plans, they should all be meant just for satisfying Krishna. So this is not so easy to do, for there are so many forces, both internal and external, which are trying to deviate us from the path of Krishna consciousness. And this is something which we have to watch out for. And Maya is very clever. Even sometimes some of our men who are even in concentration camps in Russia, they say it's better to be here than to be enjoying in the material world. Because here at least we're reminded every day to surrender to Krishna. And we have no other choice. There's nothing else to do. Here, in this nice place, everybody's enjoying the pleasant weather and everything that goes along with it. Here, you can fall totally, completely, and utterly into total Maya. Because there's nothing really forcing you to surrender to Krishna. You know, if you just ooze out into the merge of the material world, somebody in the social welfare department will pay for your merging. Therefore, if one is surrendered to Krishna or not, who cares? That's the way Maya thinks. Maya makes us think. Of course, does not mean that if somebody pays for your eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, you're going to enjoy life. It is not like that, because all of the frustrating conditions and disturbances in the mind and body will continue nonetheless according to our karma. Factually speaking, Queen Kunti asked for disturbing conditions to come upon her again and again, so that she may surrender to Krishna again and again. Of course, we are not so advanced. Generally, we are praying that there should be no disturbing conditions, because we don't like disturbing conditions. But if we, therefore, then accept Maya as better, then there's some mistake here. If we think better no disturbing conditions and better I just fall here into Maya and enjoy my very peaceful life, then there's some problem that has to be addressed. One should understand that you can live your whole life very nicely and peacefully in the lap of Maya, and at the end of this lifetime you have to take birth again. Therefore, we are not concerned with peaceful materialistic life. We are concerned with engagement in devotional service, and sometimes that may also mean that it is not always peaceful. Just like when you're trying to accomplish something very important for Krishna, that may not be peaceful. It may be full of agitation. Just like when we are distributing books or preaching, sometimes that is not so peaceful. People don't like that you're telling them surrender to Krishna. They think, what is this nonsense, surrender to Krishna? I'm surrendering to my tongue. That's good enough. Or when you are trying, for instance, to put together a fancy typesetting system, so the material nature will come and make everything a mess in different ways. So one has to keep on trying without being agitated and just accomplish the purpose. Who said it was going to be easy in this material world? Fighting for Krishna is not easy. Did anyone think that Arjuna was having a fun time on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, sticking people with arrows and getting stuck himself? You think he was having a wonderful vacation? It was a terrible experience, terrifying to behold. It was a horrifying thing, such a war. But because it was for Krishna, everybody went on and did it in a very nice way. Of course, some people, they take spiritual life to be a place where you can get freed from the troubles of the material world, and you should not be agitated. There should be no disturbance. Everything should be just the way we like it, and very peaceful and very nice and happy. And this way we should go on. But no, sometimes it means great struggle. Sometimes it means some pain. Sometimes we may become very attached to something of this material world in the name of devotional service. And then sometimes that gets taken away, and oh, what a struggle, what a horror. Oh, the mind starts to completely be disturbed in different ways, starts to rebel in different ways. Even if sometimes you're doing something very easy, the mind starts to rebel. It's like sometimes our devotees in the press, it's like if you're just stitching books, you just put one after another, after another, after another. What does the mind start saying after a short period of time? Ah! Or if one is just washing pots, and he's thinking materially, and the mind says, do anything else in the whole universe. Why? Because it's devotional service, it's surrender. And the mind thinks, how can you do this? Don't you want to enjoy? What's wrong with you? And then one thinks, yes, yes, yes. The whole goal of life is to enjoy. I don't care about surrendering to Krishna anymore. I want to go out and do whatever I can to satisfy my mind. But factually, whatever you do, the mind may say like that. In every particular service, the mind says like that at one point or another. And one has to meet that head on, so to speak, so that he can conquer the mind directly. Whatever he's doing, he will be disturbed, because the mind is agitated in the mode of passion. Therefore, one has to meet that directly and conquer the mind by continuous devotional service, hearing and chanting. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Some persons, they can't accomplish anything. Everything they try to accomplish, soon as they start it, the mind starts to blabber something in their brain like some duck up here, just quacking away. And then immediately, they can't do anything anymore. No matter what you give them to do. The mind starts quacking like a duck, sometimes passing stool here and there. And immediately, he has to give up this service and do something else. You give somebody an assignment, they can handle it for a short period of time, then they give up. Why? Because the mind is not controlled. Has nothing to do with the service or anything else. It's the fact that when the mind is not controlled, one cannot accomplish anything in a steady way. One cannot actually accomplish any purpose. One has to control the mind, concentrate the mind, fix the mind. Then he can accomplish every purpose. And that is factually the problem that we are facing as devotees. That we must understand that each and every service we are given is a means by which we can surrender to Krishna. It is part of the Sankirtan mission, whatever aspect of it may be. Book production or book distribution, or beautiful deity worship to inspire everybody, wonderful cooking to make everyone jolly and fatty. Or each and every other department, there are so many departments. Each and every one of them is simply meant to satisfy Krishna and fulfill this preaching mission. Okay, so the mind has to surrender to whatever aspect of this preaching mission one has been assigned. That is the most important point. Not that one should think that, oh, I will do something I like and then the mind will surrender automatically. No, it doesn't happen like that. We have seen persons agitate, I want this, I want this, I want this. Okay, do it. Then after 2 weeks, I don't want this. This didn't help. Then what do they conclude? Well, the best thing to do is go out into Maya and start to enjoy the muddy material existence. Yes, this is what I really want. Then they go out there, they're not happy either. Because so long as the mind is not controlled, so long as one is not fixed in devotional service, he'll never be happy. And he'll be always frustrated. Therefore, one has to surrender now to Krishna according to that particular service he's performing. Surrender to whatever there is to be done for the satisfaction of the Supreme, and factually be happy. Otherwise, you'll never be happy. And this is, for all of us, surrender is the number one business. Surrender and full conviction that if I just perform whatever I've been given for satisfying Krishna, if I just do this with great love and devotion, this will actually make the perfection of life. This will actually bring me to the platform which I've got to get at in order to make my whole goal realized. Got to get to the point of satisfying Krishna. And he'll be satisfied in whatever service if it's done with love and devotion. And if it is so that this is not that right service for you, it will change automatically. When one sees how nicely one is engaged in his particular activity, more and more responsibility will be given to him. Of course, sometimes we don't want responsibility. That's another problem. You tell somebody, just go on serving Krishna nicely and you'll get so many responsibilities. Then he immediately says, uh-oh, I better ruin everything. So I don't have anything to do, because it's much better to float around in devotional service and just enjoy this and enjoy that and eat prasadam. And in this way, then I will manage to avoid all responsibilities. Yeah. So there are many such kinds of rascals. We were also a graduate from that rascal school. But one has to understand that he has a responsibility. Responsibility. Not only to himself, but to all of mankind. And he has above all responsibility to fulfill the mission of the spiritual master. The spiritual master has given mission. Srila Prabhupada has given us all missions. And we are simply today trying to fulfill those missions which he has given. And those missions are wonderful. They are all directed at taking the conditioned souls out of their conditions of ignorance. That does not mean every conditioned soul will move into the temple. But if at least they read the books of Srila Prabhupada, if they at least even think of not only becoming vegetarian but offering their food, if they think of helping the Krishna consciousness movement, can you imagine how wonderful we could preach if the people in the material world were giving us donations every month to support the temple? Then we wouldn't have to struggle to just make some money to maintain. Then each and every devotee could go out and preach and make so many persons Krishna conscious, get them to start different Namhata centers. This would increase the preaching unlimitedly. So this is our overall goal, is to gradually bring people to the point of wanting to support the Krishna consciousness movement, rendering service to the Krishna consciousness movement. Just like in India, so many persons are supporting Krishna consciousness movement by donation. Or if they happen to work in the steel industry, they will donate steel. If they work in the plates and cups industry, they will donate plates and cups. If they work in the wood industry, they'll donate wood or whatever. In this way that people become an integral part in Krishna consciousness by helping to support that preaching mission. So this is very nice. And our preaching is actually geared up for that. But unfortunately, because we're not all very much surrendered to our particular activities, we lose sight of why we're doing what we're doing. We're doing what we're doing, first of all, to satisfy Krishna, and second of all, to somehow attract the conditioned souls to take part in this great preaching mission of Krishna consciousness. So, in any case, we can correct that. That just requires a little bit of fine-tuning of the consciousness. One has to tune that consciousness to always be aware of why he's doing what he's doing. We're doing it for Krishna. We want to satisfy Krishna. We want to actually make this Krishna consciousness movement successful. And to do this, we have to really struggle. It's not going to be easy. We have to struggle not only with our minds, not only with our bodies, not only with the minds and bodies of other devotees, but also the whole material nature, with all of its terrifying aspects, from top to bottom. The nice part of it, which wants to attract us this way to the material existence, and that horrible part of it which just bashes our heads in and makes us surrender by force. So we have to learn to avoid Maya by surrendering to Krishna. And when we actually learn this great art of surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we'll factually understand what is real satisfaction. And that is the way we should move. That's how we should move forward. So let us try to surrender to Krishna more and more and actually understand the principles of loving devotion. Hare Krishna.